do this.
Have you ever watched a network reroute traffic in seconds and thought, wow, that was pretty slick? Now, ask the uncomfortable follow-up. Did we reroute security with it? Or did we just reroute the risk faster? Today we're talking about the Cisco SD-WAN and cyber exposure. Why a smarter WAN can either make you more resilient or make you more reachable, depending on how you design the edges, the segmentation, and the access. Stick with me because I'm going to give you 3 questions that you can ask your IT team that'll instantly tell you if your SD-WAN is tightening your posture or quietly widening your attack surface. And that's coming up next on TiPS, Today in Public Safety.
Welcome to TiPS, Today in Public Safety, your go-to podcast for today's breaking stories and public safety news. Here's your host, Fletch, with today's tips.
Welcome to TiPS, Today in Public Safety. This is Fletch. I'm a NINA certified ENP. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I bring you the latest, most informative, and sometimes controversial takes on emergency communications. Today we're taking a deep dive into Cisco SD-WAN and cyber exposure, and why a resilient network doesn't automatically mean a secure one. Now, if you're an ECC or a PSAP, you already live in the world of always on. Your CAD, computer-aided dispatch, can't wobble. Your voice can't stutter. Your logging can't disappear, and your radio network can't have a bad day. So when SD-WAN shows up promising better uptime, better path selection, and smoother performance across multiple circuits, it sounds like an answer to a dream come true. But here's the catch. SD-WAN is incredible at moving traffic, but it does not by itself decide what traffic should exist in the first place. So let's break this down in plain language, and then we'll talk about what cyber exposure really means in the SD-WAN world. Cisco SD-WAN, explained like we're busy. Okay, let's start simple. Traditional WAN design is often like a railroad. You buy a dedicated track, you decide the route, and you hope nothing blocks the line. If the track goes down, you scramble, or you fail over in a way that sometimes feels like it was designed in a different decade. SD-WAN, on the other hand, is more like air traffic control. You can have multiple paths like MPLS, broadband, LTE, or whatever mix that your agency's got access to. In the core, the SD-WAN fabric monitors conditions and chooses the best route for the traffic at that moment. So for public safety, that's a real win. If you've got multiple sites like a primary ECC and a backup location, SD-WAN can make failover less dramatic. If you've got cloud services, SD-WAN makes your access more consistent. And if you have video, mapping, analytics, or other bandwidth-hungry tools, SD-WAN steers all of those flows intelligently. And in a world where NG911 connectivity and enterprise systems are all increasingly interdependent, this kind of control is not just nice. Often, it's necessary. But here's the one sentence that makes most sense today. SD-WAN improves availability. It does not automatically improve security. In fact, if you deploy SD-WAN like it's just networking, you can accidentally expand your reachable footprint. And that's because SD-WAN makes connectivity easier. It's one of its jobs. But connectivity is what hackers love. So before we even say the word cyber exposure, let me give you a practical way to think about this. When you connect more circuits, more sites, more vendors, and more cloud apps, you're building more paths. And SD-WAN is very good at finding paths. So the question is whether you've designed the network so that only the right paths exist, and only the right identities are allowed to use them. And that's what brings us to cyber exposure. Cyber exposure and why it sneaks up on smart networks. Now, cyber exposure is one of those phrases that sounds a little abstract until you live it. Here's a clean definition. Cyber exposure is the gap between what you believe is protected and what is actually reachable. Think about that. Usually it shows up as one of these patterns. A configuration that was meant to be temporary becomes permanent. A segmentation rule is assumed but never verified. One of your vendor tunnels is a lot broader than anyone realized. A management interface is accessible from places that it never should be, and one that public safety is exposed to a lot. An older system still exists for one dependency, and then suddenly it's reachable from more parts of the network than it ever was before. Now let's connect all of that to SD-WAN. One of SD-WAN's jobs is to push intelligence out to the edge. That's a feature. Edges get smarter and policies get more flexible. That gives operations teams more options. But that also means that your edge is now a very important security boundary. And if the edge gets misconfigured, you can expose management planes. And if segmentation is weak, you can end up flattening the entire environment. And if identity and access control are not tight, you can end up turning fast failover into fast lateral movement. Now let me paint that in a PSAP flavored picture. You've got an ECC network and you have a separate admin network. That's good. You've got call handling, CAD, logging, radio, and maybe some NG911 related interconnects. Great. Now the agency adopts SD-WAN to improve resiliency across multiple circuits and locations. That's also a good thing. But then someone says, we're going to need vendors to reach our systems for support. And then a remote access method gets added. Then someone says, hey, we need a couple of quick exceptions for a brand new tool. And the rules get loosened a little. Then someone says, hey, we need to test failover. And a route is opened. Individually, each change is reasonable. Collectively, you just created an environment where a compromised credential no longer gets access to one thing, it gets access to a pathway. And that is the exposure moment. Not a Hollywood hack, just a quiet reality where the network is now easier to traverse than anyone intended. So I want to give you a short reality check that we're going to land this plane with 3 questions that you can ask your IT team tomorrow. Here's the reality check. Resiliency can amplify risk if security design doesn't keep pace. If your network can reroute traffic in seconds, it can also reroute a bad session in seconds. If your environment is complex and you can't answer the question, what can talk to what, you're operating on assumptions. If your vendor access isn't tightly scoped, you don't have vendor support, you've got vendor proximity. And in public safety, proximity is not neutral. We're not just protecting a file server. In Next Generation 911, we're protecting the operational heartbeat of emergency response. That's a big deal. So when somebody says SD-WAN made us more resilient, the correct next sentence is, show me how we reduced exposure while we did it. The bottom line. Here's the bottom line. Cisco SD-WAN can be a fantastic move for public safety networks. It can improve uptime, it can improve performance, and simplify operations. But if you treat it like a pure networking project, you're going to risk building a faster highway system with no guardrail. So here are the 3 questions that I promised you that you're able to ask your IT team that'll immediately tell you if your design is solid. First, show me the segmentation map. Not a diagram from last year, a current, verified view of what is isolated from call processing and CAD. And what's not? Question number 2. Show me how the SD-WAN management plane is protected. Who can access it and from where? And what authentication are they using and how's that being monitored? Third question. If a vendor credential is compromised, what's the maximum blast radius? What can those credentials reach and what stops it from reaching further? If the answers you get back are crisp, you're in good shape. If your answers are a little fuzzy, well, you're not doomed, but you're exposed. And if you get let me get back to you on that, lock the doors and turn off the power. Smart routing isn't the same as secure architecture. If you make both true, you get resiliency without regret. That wraps up this episode of TiPS, Today in Public Safety. This is Fletch. You can follow me on social media at Fletch911. You can check out the full archive of all my TiPS episodes at 911tips.com. And my blog site is at fletch.tv. My professional site is fletch911.com. Please remember to like and subscribe, and be sure to tell your friends. Thanks so much for listening, and if you're in public safety, thanks for what you do every single day. We'll catch you next time. Take care.
You've been listening to TiPS, Today in Public Safety, your go-to podcast for today's breaking stories and public safety news. Hosted by Fletch and available every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Catch past episodes on 911tips.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and remember to join us each week for the latest on NG911. I am Spider Harrison, the official 911 voiceover dude. Catch me on Sirius XM on various channels, including 90s on 9, the 10 spot, and on the Weekend Countdown on Hits 1. Or don't regret it for the rest of your life. Either way, I'm good.